Are you willing to every single time relax and release, relax and release, relax and release, relax and release, relax and let go? So basically, your spiritual practice happens in your life. Life is your spiritual practice. It is. Life is your spiritual practice. Either it's taking you further away from self or it's bringing you back to self. It is your friend. Everything that happens in life is your friend. Everything that happens is an opportunity to get better at what we're talking about. People once said to me, I understand before I get in a conversation or an argument or whatever it is, right? And afterwards I can come back, but you're not, somebody actually said, but you don't mean that I'm actually there while I'm talking to the person. Of course I mean you're there while you're talking to the person. Of course I mean that every word they're saying and your mind is, emotions are doing different things, that you're fully aware of this and you're letting go while it's happening. Relax and release, release, relax, relax and release. Yes, I do mean that. Let's get that straight, right? Every second you are there. At first it's hard. Just keep bringing it back. Relax and relax and release, relax, relax and release. The most important thing is that you realize it's the most important thing. Because it's easy to be involved in the most important thing to you. It is the only rational way to live your life. It's not a religious technique or something like that. It's let's wake up and do something meaningful and reasonable. So you constantly let go. Eventually, you will achieve what I call a state of perpetual persistence, persistent, perpetual consciousness, constant consciousness, all right? You're established in the seat of self. What does that mean? You will never, ever leave that seat ever again for the rest of your life. No matter what happens, no matter who dies, no matter who leaves you, no matter what happens. All this stuff can come up, you'll know it did, and you will have the right to decide what to do about it. You will have the right to decide what to do about it.
Welcome to the Almost Awakened podcast with your host, Bill Reel.
So I don't know how you want to start again. Here we are, right? Infants on Thrones, Almost Awakened, Bill Reel, Glenn Ostlund, which was vice versa from the respective podcasts that they host. Yeah. You and I are sitting down. You and I have already talked about the first 6 presentation parts in a series by Michael Singer on I think the topic is the path to surrender.
Yeah.
And you suggested that we tackle this. I'd never listened to this. You'd listened to this several times. It's been
Blame it on me, Bill.
Deeply influential in your life. Yeah. And so here we are. We finished up. You and I are now revisiting presentation part 7 and part 8. And it felt like both these episodes were the wrapping up, were essentially, here's the technique. We spent the first 6 episodes saying, here's this present moment unfolding right before your eyes. It took 13.8 billion years to get here. We're not the outside world that we're observing. We're not our thoughts as they enter our mind. We're not our feelings as those rise up in us. We have these is it samskaras?
Yeah, with an M.
Okay, samskaras, which are the experiences that are good or bad, but lead us to have expectations, either good ones or bad ones. It's what leads to us feeling disrupted all through the day when the outside world or somebody else's stuff runs up against our stuff. And we talked about that in the past 2 conversations. And so here we are in the final part, and we're now going to tell the listeners how they cannot let the world and other people's stuff run up against their stuff.
No, we're not.
Did I?
We're going to tell them what to do when the world hits their stuff, because you can't avoid the world.
You can't avoid the feelings coming. You can't avoid it. Yeah. So did I? Other than that last little part, did I give a decent synopsis?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
There are a couple things that he establishes that you're the one that's in there. He says that a lot. You're in there, and it's not always nice in there. It's not always the most pleasant experience. And why is that? And it's because we store these things in our mind, and he calls them samskaras, and it blocks the energy that's coming up from our heart. And we had this homework assignment. You remember that, Bill?
Yeah, we talked about what this feeling was, this spiritual high that he's on, and what is it, and how do we get it?
And that's really, I think what 7 and 8 are about is, what's it like to surf on the wave of chi, on the waves of this chi, on this energy, this natural energy, and what is it? And so you framed it kind of as you understand most of what he's saying up to this point. Like he said, there's 3 things that are going on: the world coming in through your senses, what you're thinking, and what you're feeling. And they said, but there's this 4th category. There's this chi, this energy. And you're like, I get the first three, the fourth one, I'm kind of, So where are you now on it? What do you think about it?
So my wife and I went to Salt Lake City for a wedding this previous weekend. And then also we went to Mesquite yesterday. And on both trips, as we're in the car ride, as we're going out and doing things, I tried to keep this Michael Singer presentation, all 8 parts, kind of try to be aware of it and think about it and kind of soak it in as I'm just having life unfold right before me in each of these present moments. And on the trip to Salt Lake, we got to about Provo, and we finally passed a temple that was close enough to the highway that I could see it, a temple from Mormonism, which is the faith. I have to say this because I don't like talking about Mormonism on my podcast, but in this instance, I'll have to just because it's pertinent to the conversation. So we're passing Provo, Utah, and here's this edifice of this religion I used to believe in that I feel lied to me. I feel it deceived me. I feel it harmed me in some ways. And I still carry a little bit of anger, although I've moved on, I think, for most of it. And I still get triggered a little bit when I see those buildings. So we get to the building, and I'm intentionally thinking about Michael Singer as I come up on it. And I see it, and I get this little sensation that starts to rise up, and I go, just relax and release it. Michael Singer, his formula is R&R, which is to just relax and release it. He says, don't give that feeling much time. Don't name it. Don't think much about it. The feeling starts to come up, and you just relax and release it. And that feeling is allowed to just do what it does, and then it moves on. And then you get to move into the next present moment, and that feeling is gone, and some other feeling comes up. And so you're continually relax and release it. And it worked when it was these minor things that I could keep Michael Singer's formula on the forefront of my mind. It worked really well. There were other parts of the trip when me and my wife were trying to hash out hard parts of things that were abrasive to each other on, and the conversation just isn't going the way I want it to go. And so I'm getting this stressed out feeling inside me, and I'm trying to relax, and it's not working that well. And so I early on, again, I'm going to grant that this is a practice. I'm going to grant that it takes some time and effort and energy to build new habits around this formula. But as of right now, it's a mixed bag. Sometimes it works really well. Sometimes it really struggles to work. And maybe the problem's me, maybe it's not. But again, coming into this conversation with you, Glenn, and having these 3 parts that we've talked about, these are spiritual practices that I have, on some degree, been thinking about and practicing anyway. And so I think it works, and I think I've got to get better at it. I still don't understand this spiritual energy. So I'll just say this. I'm feeling good. I'm going down the road. I'm having a good time on this trip with my wife. And then something I see disturbs me. I relax and release. And then I'm just right back to having a great day again. And I didn't notice anything extra special about the feelings I was feeling. I didn't notice anything extra special about energy or anything like that. And I'm open to that. I'm not closed off to those ideas. But there wasn't something magical. It just seemed like I went back to, and I'm always a guy who, I shouldn't say always, but I almost always wake up on the right side of the bed. I'm always happy. I never have really suffered from depression. I've never had suicidal ideology. I've never had to take medicine for depression. I've just always been in a good mood, and my life's always been good enough that I've not had to sweat a lot of things. And so maybe it's something I kind of naturally carry around anyway that other people don't, is that positivity and happiness and that peace of mind. But I'm open to a conversation here where somebody, you or somebody after these episodes all release, reaches out to me and say, no, you're missing the boat. It's not just this general feeling of well-being. There's something extra that comes along that you're not getting. And so I guess I'll stop there and let you put in your 2 cents about all the stuff I just said in the last 5 minutes.
All of it, huh? Okay.
Yeah, all of it. Every drop.
Every drop of it. Well, I started by asking you about that mysterious, enigmatic 4th category of chi, but where you took it, I found more interesting actually than this idea of energy or chi, because you were talking about trying this R&R technique and whether or not it worked. And you said worked probably like 5 or 6 times. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work. I don't know if it works. What does that mean to you for a technique like this? And especially in that moment where you're driving along the road, you see the temple and you start feeling, like, oh, like all that stuff that you're feeling inside. and you relax and release, but it doesn't work. What does that mean that it didn't work?
Well, it worked there. It doesn't work. It seemed to not work in some
when you were
disturbances.
Talking with your wife.
Yeah,
when
and
your
it
wife
seemed to
was
work in
upset with
others.
you for being so
being a jackass husband or something. Whatever stuff I do that runs up against her stuff, And we're hashing it out in the car. And so now in this conversation of each of us sharing like how we can be better partners to each other.
Which part of hashing it out is the R and the R?
So, well, I'll just tell you how I did it. So as my wife is saying things and those things are disturbing my insides and I feel a tension starting, I thought, hey, here's a perfect spot to put into practice Glenn and Michael Singer's.
I got added to it. Nice.
Well, yeah, you and I talking about it and you suggesting it and introducing it to me. And the fact that it's impacted you. And so I'm putting it into practice and I say, okay, all I have to do here is just relax and release it. So I relaxed. I tried to release it, and it didn't go away.
What didn't go away?
The inability to be comfortable while the feeling rose up within me. Right? I couldn't get comfortable. I couldn't be okay with it. It's not that it needs to go away. I understand I seem to be making an argument that it needs to go away to be okay. And you're saying like, it's not going to go away. The feeling's there. It's going to rise up and then it's going to go away on its own time. And some other new feeling will come along and your job's just to sit with it and let it do its thing without assigning your brain and body having to do something with it. Right.
Yeah. Like hashing things out, so when you use that, like we're trying to hash things out, like to me, that's the opposite of relax and release. Because when you're hashing things out, what you're doing is you're saying, no, this is what I really mean. No, you don't understand. No, that's not what I said. No, I'm not that. And you're in that kind of defensiveness and you're naming it. You're not taking the Thomas McConkey bowl of water and dumping it out. You're hashing, and that's not relaxing and releasing, right?
Oh, right. So we shouldn't talk about things. We should not sit down together, me and my wife, and hash out the hard shit of a relationship because I don't think you can exit those disturbances and giving stories to them when you're doing that.
It's not about you hashing things. Like if it's your stuff that's getting triggered inside of you, only you can be the one to relax and release it.
And it is my stuff. My wife is saying like, hey, I'm happier or I'm better off if I do this thing or that thing. And those sometimes our spouse being our spouse, they don't do everything the way we want them to do them. And well, they do some things, right? But when our partner does something that we wish they did it not that way, and sometimes we can't sit still in that, and the partner needs the space to just be them and to be able to do that thing. Her sharing with me, hey, Bill, if you could just lighten up here and just leave me be here, then I'm going to be happier. And I'm recognizing it's only my ego and my unhealthiness that keeps her from being allowed to do that. So I know it's me. It's my shit that needs to work on. It's my shit I got to sit with. And as I sat with it and just tried to rest or relax and release it, it didn't go away. And again, maybe it doesn't need to. And I don't know what to do with it if it doesn't go away. Because then I'm still all worked up.
What's the it that didn't go away?
The feeling, the anxiety, the change of breath, the feeling that I can't live with what she's asking me to be, and nor can I can't hold on to being the way that I am and feel good about it because it's my shit that's getting in the way of her. And I can't just compromise and become what she needs me to be because I've got all my samskaras assigned to that thing that's bothering me. So I just struggled to sit with the sensation.
How long did you sit with it?
Our conversation probably lasted an hour and a half. Mm-hmm. And, that disturbance.
That was an hour and a half of hashing.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't an hour and a half of R&R.
No, and again, my wife and I are to a point, we've been married 23 years. We've worked out a lot of the shit that we do to each other. And so we do have a good space that we can throw out constructive criticism and not have it turn into a brawl or a yelling and screaming match where we start assigning, derogatory remarks or anything to each other. Mm-hmm. But so the conversation happened. When the conversation was over, we decided to let it go, move on, and enjoy the rest of our trip. So it was gone.
So after an hour and a half, you decided to let it go.
Yeah, let it go.
After an hour and a half of hashing, you decided.
And trying to figure out, like, can I give? Can you give? What's the compromise? What's the reasonable request we can make of each other? What can you do? What can you not do? Is it fair that you compromise here when it's really my ego that's getting in the way?
Yeah.
And then an hour and a half later, I guess eventually I relaxed and released without knowing it. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, he says something at one point in part 7 that, or maybe it's part 8, I don't remember which one it is, that once you really master this technique, you realize that anytime you put up any resistance, you're creating a new samskara that might take 10 years to get rid of. You're putting up some resistance to these things. And so that hour and a half of hashing things out, even though you go, oh yeah, it's healthy. We've developed this really great pattern over 23 years of doing this. Maybe you're still just reinforcing your samskaras and you're still just kind of padding it. And the next time something like this comes up again, you're going to hash it out again for an hour.
I'm pretty sure I will. I'm pretty sure I'm going to.
Yeah.
Does this work for you? Do you feel like you really understand this concept, and when stuff runs up against your stuff, you just let it do its thing and let it go? Like, eventually let it go. It just
wow. It's awesome. It's because it's like, I don't need to be right. I don't need to be right.
Yeah, and I don't need to be right. And I'm often not.
And I don't need to argue about this. I'm interested, so I want to listen. So, I'll and sometimes that doesn't work either, and what do I mean by it doesn't work? Because if I'm having these conversations like you were having with your wife and I have it with Cammie, there's times where I'm triggering her stuff and she's triggering my stuff. And really the only way to relax and release is to kind of talk about it, but just to actually do it. And so you asked me if it works for me. It does. And it's going, okay, I can feel that feeling that's coming up in me that is the fight or flight response. This is I'm going to dig my heels in and I'm going to be defensive because she didn't understand something that I said, or she's misrepresenting something to me. And, I just, that can't be, I can't let that go. Like, what is that all about? Like, why is it that I've spent my life feeling like, oh no, I need this person to understand exactly where it is that I'm coming from? That creates so much stress and anxiety for me. And I'm doing it to myself. And so if I stop doing it and I go, okay, let's just not right here and see what happens. And then it kind of, it's just gone. And it doesn't mean that it's like gone forever, that I'm samskara free. I'm not samskara free, but I do think that this technique is effective and it works, but it only works for me. It doesn't work if I'm trying to change somebody else. That's the complete opposite of what this is, like trying to enforce my will on somebody else changing their mind and going, oh, it didn't work because they didn't change their mind. Like, right. No, it's me taking away that pressure, like from the teapot that's boiling up. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to open up the lid and just let all the steam out at once instead of trying to like push it down and hold it down and push it back. And yeah, it works. What
does that look like? So let's try to throw out maybe an example or two, and you tell me how you would work through it in this new way. Okay. So I don't know what irritates you or what runs up against your stuff, but I don't know if you're an organized guy and if somebody not loading the dishwasher right does it, or like, what's your thing? Like, and if you're willing, whatever one of the deeper things are, something that really runs deep that you could say, like, it's easy to say when someone doesn't, put the dishes away, but on this really serious thing, I was able to put it into practice as well. But if not, let's pick a minor thing then, and let's at least talk about what it looks like when you do this right. And again, I get it. Do it right. Do it wrong. Again, in this space, nothing's right. Nothing's wrong. Nothing's good. Nothing's bad.
Yeah. So, okay. The house that Cammie and I are in has a really awesome master bedroom suite. It's like a 2-story open suite. So, and this is where I am right now. I'm kind of like in this loft office area, and I'm looking to my right. There's this catwalk that goes to the other end where there's like bookshelves and there's another desk. And, sometimes I'm sitting here and Cammie's sitting at that desk and we're working on stuff. It's really awesome. There's some stairs that go down, and, the bedroom's down there. The bathroom is just below me, it's really cool. But it also, when I'm recording a podcast and I'm like a sound Nazi, it's like, I don't want noise. And I can get kind of like an asshole about like, there's noise.
You and me both.
Yeah. And that's not cool to her, because then she's like, this is my house that you're living in, and you're telling me that I have to be quiet and I have to tiptoe around here. So that's an area where there's times where her stuff comes up against my stuff, because I'm like, yeah, but you knew that this is what I do and I need to have this space. She's like, yeah, but if you're doing it too much, then I don't have a place for me. And so just the other day, we were having this, I was recording something up here, and she came in downstairs, and there's the sound of the door opening and shutting. And I spoke down to her. I said, hey, are you going to be down here for a while? And she's like, oh, what? You're telling me to shut up again? Like it's what her thinking, because I just hit her stuff. And then I've recognized, oh, I've hit her stuff. And so then I went down to try to like smooth it out. And I had this great idea, purest intentions in the world. I was going to say, look, I used to be a lot worse. So let me tell you a story about how I used to be and how now I'm much better. And I started telling the story, and all she could hear in this state was me telling her that she's annoying me. I'm like, no. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that you don't annoy me anymore, because things like this used to, and it doesn't anymore. And I just was digging myself this hole by trying to basically trying to manipulate her, but basically trying to get her to understand me and where I'm coming from. And and it was frustrating her. It was starting to frustrate me. And so we both, she's the one that got this 8-course series on Michael Singer. She's the one that encouraged me to read The Untethered Soul. She's very committed to these ideas, and it's great being with a person who's committed to it like this, because then when we're in that situation, we're like, all right, I think we need to do a little R&R. And some people can calm down quicker than others from those situations, but both of us have been able to speed up our recovery time there. So we kind of sat back to back and did like a little 2 or 3 minute meditation where we just kind of like breathed in and out. We just kind of felt each other's backs against each other's back and just kind of let it be, like realizing we don't want this to be something that really gets in the way of our relationship. And, then I said to her afterwards, look, if I'm recording up here and there's sound down there, who gives a fuck? I'm not going to care anymore. If your son decides to go and start playing piano, which we might hear at some point in today's conversation, which would be pretty. It'd
be kind of cool to have that. Yeah, it'd be kind of cool to have that as a practice in this moment.
Yeah. Oh, so what? I'm doing this podcast that people are listening to for free. If there's some sound in the background, oh well, I can deal with it. They can deal with it. It's not going to be a big deal. So let's just change the story that we're telling about that. And so there's an example of it. Instead of that escalating, because both of us really want to come together. We both want to have peace of mind, and finding ways to do that in ourselves and taking responsibility, like me taking responsibility for, I was telling you the story because I thought that it was going to have this result, but it didn't have this result. Actually, that's my fault. I'll stop.
So when somebody making noise while you're recording, that their stuff ran up against your stuff, which is I'm putting out this quality product. It has to, the only way this thing is successful and grows is if it has the best of sound quality. And so whatever your stuff is inside that says, I've got to put out a good product. I can't have it be disrupted. I can't have people hear things in the background.
Right.
So you start to feel this sensation in you based on all these stories over the course of your time podcasting and your experience with the podcast.
We're talking about 10 years of me doing this, like multiple times a week, sitting down in front of a computer, recording myself speaking into a microphone and then listening back to it. And if I hear, like I remember in the early days of recording, somebody would be like clipping their fingernails or, something, and I would listen to it and it would just drive me insane. And so this formed this samskara in me, that like sound when I'm recording is triggering to me. It makes me, it upsets me. And so recognizing that's my stuff that I'm carrying around. And so how do I relax and release that? I just make the conscious effort when I'm in that moment to go, oh, it's starting again. I'm going to breathe and just, let that sound be there and not worry about it. But I mean, that's one way of looking at the story that I gave. But the other one is, as she and I are interacting with each other and we're trying to figure out how are we going to coexist in this awesome space that we both chose to be in. And for the most part is fantastic. But every once in a while, there's these little roadblocks that we have. And in this case, it happened to do with, me recording a podcast and not wanting sound in the background. But as we're talking it over with each other, and we're both triggering each other more, recognizing it and going, okay, this is like, we're triggering each other more because in my past relationships, I didn't feel understood. And maybe it goes all the way back to my dad. And, it could go back to all of these things, but another thing that Michael Singer says in here is you don't have to understand. You don't have to understand the source of where it's coming from. You don't have to understand all the why. You just recognize there's this feeling that wants to come out. And it's like, I don't know. Did you ever read Jonathan Haidt, The Righteous Mind?
I have listened to parts of it. I've got it on Audible.
Okay.
I have not read it all the way through, but I'm familiar with him.
He gives this metaphor of an elephant and a rider. Are you familiar with that metaphor?
I think so, but remind me.
So the elephant is, if you've got a human being on top of an elephant and the elephant decides he's going to charge in one direction, how much influence does the rider really have on steering the elephant around? Like if the elephant's calm, he can kind of like give him nudges and he'll move, in this place. But like once the elephant gets riled up, it's just going to charge. And so the analogy that he creates is that the elephant is like it's our emotional system. It's our feelings. And when we get triggered by something, we just charge and we just go. And our reason, our rationality, our intellect is like this rider. And the rider doesn't really control the elephant. The elephant controls. And that whole book is about moral framework and why people are creeped out by this thing or that thing. And does it come from culture? Is it nurture or nature? Where do moral frameworks come from? And basically what he's saying is that there are these feelings that we have, and we don't really know why we're having it. This is the elephant that's reacting to something. Michael Singer would say something hit your stuff and you've got a feeling that's rising up from it. And so then the intellect steps in. And this is what Jonathan Haidt says about the rider. The rider starts telling stories about why the elephant is responding the way that he's responding. But those stories are usually post hoc. Those stories come up after the elephant's been triggered. And the stories might say, oh, well, I did this because X, Y, and Z. And I tell this very causal, linear explanation. It's very rational, very logical. And it's also baloney. The rider doesn't really know why the emotions came up, but the writer feels like it's got to tell a story. There's got to be the story as to why. So that was very influential on me when I started recognizing that the stories that I'm telling myself about why I'm feeling the feelings that I'm feeling are usually not right. But I think that they're right. But that's kind of the function of the intellect, is to soothe and calm down the elephant. Even if I got to tell you these stories that, this is why or whatever, and just soothes it and calms it down. So adding that with this Michael Singer stuff, when I'm in a potential argument, I kind of recognize those feelings are coming up and I'm starting to tell stories to justify why I did what I did. And I really just got to knock it off. And it's what you say all the time. Don't name it. Don't tell the story around it. You don't need it.
Yeah.
You don't need it.
Yeah. And I will say, like, in practice, this works and doesn't work for me. Not just Michael Singer, but just this general idea of my wife or I are having a conversation. Me and my friends are having a conversation. Me and my kids are having a conversation. And there are things that trigger me. My daughter, there are things about her emotional unrest that triggers me, and I'm now trying to get control of my world again. So I get louder to try to get her to get quiet. It never works. And I do the same thing over and over. And so in the last year or two, again, just maybe going back to what I've said before, which is learning that, look, and I did an episode on this for the Almost Awakened podcast a couple months ago, where I said, look, all of us have these lifetime of experiences in how we deal with our kids, our spouse, our coworkers. And sometimes we want the people around us to show up differently. And yet we keep responding to these triggers the exact same way. And we keep getting the same results. And we act like we want something different, but do we really? Do we really want something different if we do it the same old way? And so I think that when you start to, again, be aware that you're aware, and you start to go, here it goes again. Here's another one of these similar kinds of experiences. And I can tell if I do this the way I've always done it, we're going to spiral out, end in an argument. Both people are going to go in their separate directions, pissed at each other. Let's do it different this time. Let's just sit. Let's just talk. Let's just figure out a better way. And it really does come to what I think Michael Singer is hitting on, but I can't do it the way he's saying. Maybe I'm doing it. I'm just doing it differently. I don't know. But what happens is I feel that sensation from my daughter saying something or my wife saying something. And I sense inside my head, like this could spiral. This could turn into what it always turns into. And I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to show up differently. I'm going to keep my voice calm. I'm not going to be the expert trying to fix the problem and send out all this advice that's unwanted. I'm just going to sit and listen, and maybe I get one chance to throw in some kind wisdom, but not with an effort to try and fix, but just to get them to maybe think about the situation with some of my own experience added in. And it goes completely different. I don't know if that's it, but it feels like these are connected. Like when you show up differently and you don't go into the same old way you've always done it, and you recognize that sensation could lead there, but you just let that sensation sit there without really impacting your outward behavior. It's like you show up as if that feeling's not there. You treat it as if it's not there. You talk as if it's not there. It doesn't need to get fixed based on that sensation.
Yeah, I think I mostly agree with that. He makes a statement at one point, kind of early on in episode 7, or in course 7, that this is not about mind control. You know, if you're hoping that you're going to be getting techniques on how to control your mind, you're in the wrong place. That's not what this is about.
Anyone who's teaching you mind control, pick up your bags, put on your shoes, and run. You don't go in there and say, and a lot of people do this. I did it when I started. That's why I'm here to share with you. I want you to skip the mistakes I made. To sit there and say, you don't go in there and say, my mind is a problem. It's negative. It doesn't shut up. It complains all the time. It finds something wrong with everything, right? The lunch isn't as big as it was last time. It's not exactly the temperature that I want, blah, 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 blah. You don't go in there and say, my mind is a problem. I'm going to shut it up. Anyone who's teaching you mind control, run. Mind control has nothing to do with spiritual growth. It has nothing to do with this. It is the same as world control. All right, go out there and control the world so that it doesn't bother you. Go out there and control your mind so that you don't have to be so bothered. There is a reason the world is the way it is. I spent a lot of time teaching you that, didn't I? I hope you respect that now, right? There's a reason. The truth of the matter is, and no one likes when I say it, every moment in front of you is perfect. It is the perfect result of every single force that caused it to be that way. Do you understand that? If you took all the inputs from the beginning of time, it would say, wow, that's a miracle. It's exactly right. All right? It's not perfect what I want. It's not perfect morally. It's not perfect any of this stuff, right? It's not optimal necessarily, but it is perfect. Do you understand that? You have to start there to understand it is exactly the way that all the forces would cause it to be, and those forces go back to the beginning of time. You don't go in there and say, my mind is a problem. I'm going to shut it up. It is the perfect result of every single force that caused it to be that way. This is the truth. So it's not about manipulating the world to make it match me, and it is not about fighting with your mind. Do not ever fight with your mind. That's like I'm going to put a knife in two hands and I'll let my left hand and right hand fight with each other. Guess who loses? Me.
So when you said you act as if that feeling's not there, that kind of sounded a little bit like mind control, or maybe repressing or suppressing, or whichever one of those that is. I don't think it's pretending that the feeling's not there. I think it's acknowledging that the feeling's there, respecting that the feeling's there. But what he talks about is stepping back, and this is a concept we haven't brought up before, but it's an important one that he makes, and I don't remember which course it's in, the seat of self. Sitting back in the seat of self. And that just means you're the observer. You're observing what's going on, and you've created this metacognitive distance between you and the situation.
And your ego, right? Your ego is detached. Not that I don't like that framing, because Eckhart Tolle says the death of my ego's died, and I don't buy that.
Yeah.
But you sense like the ego is this unhealthy part of you that tries to keep your world always aligned and tries to make everybody else responsible for things that go wrong and tries to justify why you do what you do. And so for me, it's observing the ego as a separate piece of me. I often tell people when I'm in these kind of conversations, I say, I almost like take my ego, inside my head, I'm pretending to take my ego away from me and kind of set him on my shoulder. So he's still there. I can still feel him, but he's not in charge. I can feel what he's feeling. I can sense what he wants to do and what he wants to say, but he's separate from me, and my healthy part of me is going to now operate in this situation, and the ego isn't going to have this go the way the ego's always made it go. And again, I'm interrupting you and throwing in my own 2 cents again.
Doesn't bother me, man. I R&R. Go ahead. Try to annoy me, Bill. You can't do it because I'm in mind control. No, it's not mind control. No, I agree with what you're saying. You know, I also don't like the idea that the ego is bad. I don't like the idea that the ego needs to be killed. I don't think it's even possible for the ego to be killed. I think what's bad is, and I really even hesitate using that word bad, but I think when it's the ego that's running the show, without you sitting back in the seat of self and recognizing what's going on, because then it's just like, it's like these automatic programs, if X, then Y. And I think that's what the samskaras are. It's these patterns of preferences. If X, then Y. If this comes in that you don't like, then push it away. If this comes in that I like, then cling to it and don't ever let it go because I don't ever want it to go. You know, it's like if X, then Y. And that automatic stuff is running the show of your life, whether it's going to be a good outcome or a bad outcome. But if you take a step back and you're in that seat of self, then I think you can choose, well, if X, then Y. Am I really going to do that? No, maybe I'll do something else. Like you were saying, I'm going to try something different than what I've done before to have a different outcome. But I think going back to what I asked you earlier, what does it mean for it to work? I think if we're looking at the effectiveness of this and how other people are responding, we're looking beyond the mark. I think it's just within yourself.
Yeah.
Because another thing that Michael Singer says that I really liked is that once you really master this, every experience is a win-win situation. Because if you're in an argument with somebody and you get upset or they get upset or you're fine or they're fine, either way it's a win because you're learning something. You're learning something about yourself and you're bringing that in, and that becomes the purpose of your life.
All the different situations you're in are going to bring to you opportunities to bother you. Have you noticed? Right? All of a sudden, you just entered a win-win situation. If something doesn't bother you, that's nice. If something does bother you, it's wonderful. It's an opportunity to grow. So now, no matter what is happening, you're in there working, enjoying, growing yourself, expanding yourself. It all becomes a positive experience at some level, right? It's just like if you play a sport. Fine, if you're winning and you're better than the other team, that's wonderful. If the other team is better than you, every single play you're learning something. You understand that? You're becoming better at the sport. That's a wonderful attitude. You're not losing, right? You win either way. Right now, we're set up in a lose-lose situation. No matter what happens, we lose. So we have so much trouble, right? Once in a while, something goes the way we want, but then it fades. If you want to grow spiritually, you can. It does not cost money. It does not take time. It has nothing to do with your status in life or your age or anything. It has to do with your attitude about what is the purpose of your life. So you have now set the purpose of your life to exploring the depth of your being. Well, that's what spirituality is, right? And it isn't like you have to wait to the end. You know, they say when you die, you'll go to heaven. No, stuff, right? You constantly grow. I die daily, St. Paul said. Okay? You're constantly growing. You're constantly releasing parts of your being, and you will become higher and higher, happier.
Like he says, I die daily, which means that the old parts of me have been updated by this newer experience where I've relaxed and released. And now, tomorrow, I'm going to be a different person than I was today. And actually, in every breath I take, I'm a different person physiologically, but the subtle differences. But you're saying this is what it means to be spiritual. I'm going to be doing this inner work on myself. I'm recognizing that I've got all of these samskaras, all of these things that I've created through the course of my life. And so what I'm going to dedicate my life to now is dissolving them. Like plop, plop, fizz, fizz. Oh, what a relief it is. It's just going to like fizzle up, and maybe you'll belch and get rid of it.
Yeah, there was a specific moment in our driving in Salt Lake City where my wife and I are talking about her stuff running up against my stuff, and me realizing like, okay, there's this sensation. I want to tell her how if she loves me, she should compromise and give me all the things that I need in this situation to feel safe and to be comfortable, to be happy, to have peace.
Wait, you said if she loves you, then she just lets you have your way all the time?
Right. That's the thought in my head. That's the ego going like, plead with her that this is just too much to ask of you and you're just too uncomfortable. And so you deserve someone to compromise to fit your stuff.
Yeah. But it's also you putting the conditions of happiness on her, not on you. If you act in this way, then I'll be okay.
Right. So I sat there for a minute. I felt the feeling and I thought, okay, let's practice this. I just sat for a moment. I just tried to relax, tried to release it. And the closest I could get in this moment was to have this moment of clarity where I said, you know what, inside my head, I'm going, you know what, this is me. This is my unhealthiness that needs her to be something different. So I'm just going to sit with it. Like, I'm just going to sit with this sensation and continue to engage her in a positive conversation and not derail the conversation, pleading for her to change her stuff to fit mine.
Yeah.
And if that's what we're talking about, that seemed to work okay. But it didn't work great, but it worked okay. It worked enough that we could continue on in our time and not have me derail us into making her change her stuff.
Yeah. And so I guess if we're talking about whether this works or not, in this situation, I would ask you, have you been able to completely surrender your need for her to be different in order for you to be okay?
No, I'm sitting with, I need to not compel her, coerce her, manipulate her into changing her stuff just because it runs up against mine. So I'm not there where I've made peace with it. I'm still struggling with it.
Yeah.
But
whether you're compelling her or manipulating her or not, like, what are you holding inside? Like, do you still believe that if she acts differently, then I'll
be okay better in those moments? Yeah, I do. But it's not okay for her to change her stuff. That's not.
What do you mean? It's not okay for her to change her stuff?
If you like, and again, it's a really personal thing, so I'm not going to go into what the specifics of what we were arguing about was.
Sure.
But if I like Indian food and she likes Italian food, and we're arguing over like, look, every Wednesday I just want to go get Indian food, and she's like, well, I want to get Italian food. At some point, I got to stop trying to make her go where I want her to go. She gets to show up as her. And she gets to enjoy the present moment unfolding before her. And she shouldn't have to compromise how she lives her life just so that my insides aren't feeling some turmoil. Because my ego goes, I need her to be this way so I feel safe. I need her to be this way so I can be happy.
Yeah.
We all get to show up as we are, and we all try to be healthy to each other and to be kind and compassionate and all those good positive traits. But even when we're being our best self, it runs up against another person's best self. And then the person who it ran up against is going like, hey, stop doing that. Stop making noise, walking around, getting yourself a glass of water while I'm recording a podcast, right?
Yeah. This is where being twice divorced, Bill, has some real advantages.
Yeah, maybe I should divorce my wife. Babe, honey, I came home tonight. I had an epiphany. Glenn talked me into divorcing you.
Yeah.
I'd remarry her again.
What's that?
I'd remarry her again.
That's sweet. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I'm happy to hear that. Well, what I mean, Bill, is that, in my first marriage, I was so afraid all the time of upsetting her or, doing anything that would lead to divorce, because that just seemed like that would be the worst possible thing for myself, for my kids. It's just, if I'm going to put it in the terms of cognitive distortions, I was catastrophizing this idea of divorce. And then it happens and I go through it and I realize, okay, I'm still all right. My kids are still okay. Things aren't ideal. They're not like the way that I wanted them to be, but I haven't lost the ability to have a good day. I haven't lost the ability to be okay. I haven't lost the ability to love and be loved. And so whatever it is that's telling you that if my wife doesn't come with me to eat Indian food on Wednesday nights, this is going to be a catastrophe.
Yeah, all the shit's going to hit the fan, right?
All the shit's going to hit the fan. That's just bullshit.
It's not true.
It's not true.
It's not.
But the more that you're holding on to it, and the more that you're arguing for it, the more that you're hashing it out, the more you're keeping that alive. And that's one of these blocks then that isn't allowing you to feel that enigmatic chi energy and maybe in this case, it's just the love that you have for your wife that tells you, I would marry her again in a heartbeat, And so like, what are these little arguments for, doing? What are they about? Why are they necessary? He does another thing. It's either in 7 and 8 where he's talking about doing like a risk to benefit situation. And he's like, there's 100% risk. There's zero benefit. What benefit is coming out of this argument? What benefit is coming out of holding on to this lie that if she's with you on Wednesday night to eat Indian food, then you're going to be okay. Right.
Because then it'll be something else, right?
Yeah. I mean, you go eat Indian food without her. And maybe you'll realize, oh, actually, I prefer being with her more than the type of food that we eat.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, I'm with you. So I'm in my head still wrestling with all of this and thinking about it. And as I like the name of the podcast I do, Almost Awakened, because I think all of us should never consider ourselves there. And if we do, then we're really probably not that awakened at all. And this is a process. And so I'm sitting with what Michael said, what you and I have talked about, and trying to stop assigning stories to the sensations I feel and stop needing to manipulate the outside world so that I don't feel those things, because I'm going to feel them till the day I die. I'm going to feel these things. And maybe I don't feel the ones I'm feeling today, but it'll be something else next week.
Yeah. And awakened doesn't mean that you're perfect and that you do it all perfect. But I mean, you're pretty awakened, Bill, from my perspective, to just being open to look at yourself, being open to take responsibility for these kinds of things. But, being open to this, like being open to the idea that there is an ego that is a part of you, but isn't the whole you.
I hope you got that, all right? You are the problem. You can't solve it outside by doing anything. So you come back into a situation of disciplining yourself to say, if I'm claiming I'm on a spiritual path, it's 24/7. It is not what you do on your weekends. It is not that. It's literally 24/7 for the rest of your life. Period. It's what's really, really important. It will determine the quality of your life. And so what you're going to see is as you relax through these things, and I'm telling you, you really do it. Just relax. It doesn't take time. You can still go to work. You can still be married. It has nothing to do with that. In fact, if you do this, I'm serious, and get serious about it. About what? My life is devoted to letting go of this garbage I built inside of me. So that if it takes just one moment of one breath, I want to be able to breathe what it's like to be me. All right? And you're not going to find you out there. You're not going to find you in your mind. It is you who's relaxing and releasing. Then the next thing that you do, all right, is sit there and say, I ain't putting any more in here. It's bad enough I got all these in here, but if something happens in life and I see resistance inside, I am going to take the time to let go. I don't care how big it is or how small it is, right? I'm going to, if somebody says to me, they're talking to me and I don't like what they said, the mind starts going, the first thing I do is remember, if I resist this, it's staying in there. It takes 1 second for it to get in, and it could take 10 years for you to get it out. Do you understand that? Right? Okay, get wise now. You will come to a point, if you let go enough times, that the driver in front of you will not bother you the way they're driving. Right? In fact, you start to have fun with it. 10 miles an hour below the speed limit? Try 20. It's a world limit. Come on, this is fun. All right? You can have fun with things. You're the only one in there. Right? You decide the quality of your life.
Yeah.
I think you're more awakened than almost awakened.
I'm pretty much awakened.
Yeah, pretty much awakened. New podcast.
So for the listeners, I think, as you pointed out last time, everybody should get this 8-part series and listen to it. I would also, maybe in this last episode, I'd like to recommend some other books, and maybe you can throw some other things out too, because you and I were talking about maybe a follow-up conversation that we have around another presentation.
Yeah.
But I think there are other books that go hand in hand with Michael Singer. I can think of a few. Ruiz's The 4 Agreements, and then the second follow-up book by him and his son, The 5th Agreement.
Yeah.
There's Unfuck Yourself. There's certain books like Sapiens and Civilized to Death and Sex at Dawn and Mating in Captivity that are also teaching us to recognize that all of us humans see the world different from each other. And if you need another human being to be on the same page with you all the time, it's never going to work. And that you need to realize that evolution is built within us, this this tribalism, and once you realize that everybody is a completely different person. Michael Singer makes the point that you think you look different. You and I look different. If you think you and I look different based on what we are inside our heads, we are physically identical twins. Like the stuff inside our heads is so different that even as you think you look different from somebody, that difference is so minuscule compared to how you think inside your head. And that I can talk about. Like that makes complete sense to me. As I've sat with my wife and we've begun to be vulnerable and to talk about what's really going on inside of our heads, as we use language, the language is different, the experience is different, our expectations of what we need or want or desire is so different. And so we now kind of give each other space to go like, that person didn't respond like I want them to, but why the hell would they? They're not me. Why would they respond with the words I need them to respond with? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. I know in my life, I put a real premium on understanding and like wanting to understand other people, wanting to be understood. Yeah. And it's just impossible. It's really impossible. Yeah. It's impossible because, you know, Michael Singer does a really good job. I've shared it with friends that have said he's a little repetitive and it gets a little tedious. And, you know, maybe, but I liked the repetition. It really helped these concepts sink in because he gives so many different examples, and he'll spend an hour, you know, moving 1 inch, maybe. He moves further than that, but, you know, it's a lot of repetition. And when he talked about how everything that I've ever seen from my perspective, like no one has ever seen what I've seen from my perspective, moment by moment by moment by moment, every place I've ever been, even, you know, my siblings. And to tie it back to Mormonism for a minute, I don't remember if I said this to you on a previous conversation or not. I may have, but I was asked once, somebody was talking to me about how they were forced to go on a mission and how uncomfortable that was, and that they just didn't really even have a choice. And, you know, isn't that terrible that the church forces people to do that? And I'm like, but you know my brother, right? He didn't go. Like, and we grew up in the same family. We grew up in the same ward. We had all the same leaders, the same parents, but he hung out with a different group of friends. He grew up 5 years younger than me. His experience of life and his personality, his makeup, he's very, very different than I am, and always has been. And so to make a sweeping statement that's like, oh, the church forces people and nobody ever has a choice. I mean, that's doing other work and other kinds of fictions that are there. But, you know, like my brother in that case, he's his own person. And for me to go in and think, oh, well, I can understand where he's coming from. I can understand what his experience of life is. I mean, I can try, and empathy is important. And I don't say don't try to empathize with people. But for me, instead of placing the premium on understanding them, it's been more on accepting them and accepting that even though I can't understand at a level that I'd like to, like I'd really like to get in the weeds and understand all the weeds, I can take like a 30,000 foot level and go, oh, I can kind of understand this. But mostly I just accept it. Yeah. I can accept it how it is and not push up against it and not cling onto it and like, oh, well, this has to stay the same always. I can't let this go, or I'll never be happy, or I can't ever have this happen to me again, or I'll never be happy. And, you know, things like that. Acceptance.
I can relate in that when it comes to me and my wife, for instance, we've begun to let go of needing the other person to see the world our way or for us to understand them and why they do what they do. And instead, just to be content that we enjoy being in the same space together. We enjoy being in the same room. We enjoy holding hands and watching TV. We enjoy going on a hike together. Whether we're processing the world as it's unfolding in front of us the same way is completely separate from whether you enjoy a certain person as a human being and whether you like being around them. And again, that doesn't mean that we won't have bad experiences, and it doesn't mean that you won't have to be around people that you don't like being around. I just think it's to just accept, and I think Michael points to this, it's accepting the world as it is. You're not going to change this moment. This moment, you might be able to change another moment in the future, but in the present moment, you can't change any present moment. It just happened. It's just happening right now as it's happening.
And I think that once you're really able to accept, like whatever happens, I'm going to accept it. I think then you can assert some of that will that you have to be creative and playful with it. And he gives some examples of how to do this. And like when you're recognizing, oh, I'm sitting in the seat of consciousness, I'm surrendering this moment, I'm going to feel good about it. Boy, I'm going to pat myself on the back. and go, this is great. This is my life's purpose. This is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to be more accepting. I'm trying to be more loving. And even gets to the point of saying any experience, anything that happens is my friend. It's my teacher. And like getting to that place, and anything that happens not only is okay and you accept it, but you say, this is my friend because it's teaching me something. I like that idea. And I've touched it. I've tasted it. Yeah. I'm not always there, but I'm there a lot more than I ever thought that I'd be able to be.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a cool place to be. I like it.
Again, I'm telling the audience that I'm somewhat struggling with the process, but yes, again, I've done this kind of work away from this particular series, and yes, much more of it today than a year ago, much more in the last year than 5 years ago, and sure as hell night and day difference from what I did when I was 20 years old, newly married. You said this brought up other things for you, this conversation that we've had, and then listening to the series again to prep for this conversation. You said there were other things that came up that you wanted to talk about. What are some other things that you thought we kind of should talk about or hit on and that were interesting?
I've got a couple that I'm going to keep concealed up my sleeve, Bill, because they can get a little weird and a little wooey.
Okay.
So I'm going to wait on those. But I think that the thing that I'd like to talk about next with you is another perspective of what surrender and letting go is. And this is a book by David Hawkins called Letting Go. And I shared with you some audio from that book. So you'll take a listen to it.
I'll start that tonight.
And he presents it in a slightly different framework. I think some of the techniques that he discusses will sound very familiar to you, not only from things that you heard from Michael Singer, but things you've heard from Thomas McConkie and others. But he creates a framework, and I think he calls it a spectrum of consciousness. It's something like that I found really fascinating and really compelling. And like, if you really want to see, how am I doing in this whole process? Where am I going? Like, what's my ultimate goal? Where do I want to be? What kind of feelings do I want to be feeling? If I've got this mysterious chi energy that is love, as he described it, it's just pure joy. How do I get to where I'm able to feel that all of the time?
Yeah.
How would you do that where you can feel that all of the time? And what are the things that get in the way? What are the things that block it? And can you identify what they are? And I'll give you a sneak peek. Is it shame? Is it guilt? Is it fear? Is it apathy? Is it pride? Is it anger?
Those all sound close to home.
Yeah. Is it neutrality? He talks about this range of emotions, and he wrote another book that was really influential that he built on for this one, and I think it's called Power versus Force, or Force versus Power. And I've read that one too. The ideas in that get reiterated in Letting Go. I prefer Letting Go to Force versus Power, but and some of it I kind of take literally, and other things I take metaphorically. But either way, it helped me to take these concepts from Michael Singer, because the biggest takeaway for me with Michael Singer was this idea of a samskara, and that I created it. Like, I don't control the world that's around me. Like, the world that's around me has been in place, 13.8 billion years of things lining up just amazingly the way they did to bring in this moment right here. But I'm the one that says whether I like this, what's going on, or whether I don't, whether I want more of it or whether I want less of it. And that has such an impact and influence on the way that I feel about life and about myself and about people around me. That was my biggest takeaway from Michael Singer. Since I'm the one that authored that unconsciously throughout the course of my life, now that I've woken up to the role that I played in doing that, now I've got a choice. Am I going to keep doing it with my eyes closed? Or am I really going to go into this and try to, relax and release when I feel these things coming up, and take that responsibility and go, yeah, I'm not going to respond the way that I used to. I'm just kind of let this flow and see what happens, see where it goes, and trust.
Yeah.
And trust. And so what happened then with the David Hawkins stuff is it kind of said, okay, once I became comfortable with that, now what's my ultimate destination? Where do I want to go? And can I trace where I am? Can I see where I am on that path? Like, am I usually feeling guilty or shameful? Am I usually in pride? I found myself in pride a lot. So it's like a way to kind of focus in a little bit closer, and was a really cool follow-up for me with Singer. So that's my suggestion.
I love all that. And a lot of that feels close to home. Like a lot of that is stuff that I think about and wrestling with.
Yeah.
We have this, me and my wife both, if our friends get together without us, like there's some, whatever you want to call it, jealousy, certainly pride. Like, why are my friends meeting without me? And do they, you worry whether, are you still liked or loved? But we can spend so much energy worrying about why we're not involved in an experience that people we care about are involved in. And the reality is that, we do things without everybody too. Like we do things with a select group. And so when those kinds of things happen, my wife sometimes goes like, oh, maybe they don't like us anymore. And I just go, yeah, I just don't want to get lost in that story. Yeah. My gut tells me everything's just great. And if we just stop telling that story, we get to go right back to life being good right here, right now for us. And next time we see our friends, they'll give us a big hug and things will be just like they were, only a little different, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think generally the world isn't unfolding the way we want to waste energy anticipating. And if we just let it be, it's going to unfold as it does. Sometimes it'll be bad, sometimes it'll be good, but it's almost never what we're preparing ourselves for. It's never what we're telling stories about. And so I think we can, in these present moments where, and I'm happy to stop rambling on about it, in these present moments, we can stop getting lost in narratives that simply waste our energy, waste our joy, waste our peace of mind, and just let it be. And I think that goes in line with what he's saying. I guess my struggle is just trying to feel this new chi energy, because I think if I could go through this experience and go, look, there's that peak energy feeling that everybody's talking about, then I could see that as the reward for doing this the right way. And I'm not feeling that yet. So I'm going to keep practicing. Next time I have a conversation about something else, let's revisit this and see how this practice is unfolding.
Do you meditate?
No. Once in a great while, but we're talking once or twice a year and maybe less.
Okay.
I'm around meditators and it seems to be a secret to their growth. To some degree, I've experienced similar kinds of growth without having to meditate. And so I've kind of said, I don't need it and I don't have time for it. Right. But the reality is I need it and I do have time for it.
Just as much time as the rest of us.
Yeah, just as much as the rest of us. Yeah.
So I started meditation maybe a year and a half ago, and I don't do it every day, but it's helped. It's helped. And so, like, if you're talking about wanting to feel that chi, I think that's the way. And I imagine that when you were because you were a convert to Mormonism, really gung-ho, you loved it. I imagine you had a lot of spiritual experiences where you felt the Holy Ghost. Yeah,
very powerful. Some that even today would struggle to redefine and give a new interpretation to.
Yeah. To me, that feeling of chi is what religious people call the Holy Ghost. That's one name for it. And I think a lot of times that feeling could be just like, oh, I'm hearing a song that I really like, or I'm at a concert, I'm out in nature or something, and just feeling like this appreciation. But I think the way that Michael Singer would describe it is that in those moments, the samskaras aren't blocking that feeling; they're kind of enhancing it because you like this moment. That experience that you talked about last time about being in Las Vegas.
Yeah, Fremont Street. Yeah, my dad and my wife.
And you felt that. Because like right now, as we're sitting here, if I'm silent, I feel that inside of me. I feel it. And it's that like still small little Holy Ghost feeling that if you think it's just bullshit, you're not going to feel it. But if you're like, okay, I'm going to quiet my mind, I'm going to quiet my cynicism, and I'm just going to feel around my heart area. Is there something there? Is there some kind of a warmth? Is there some kind of peace? Is there some kind of stillness that's in there? Like in meditative practices, focusing on that feeling, and it can grow. And like the way that Michael Singer talked about it was that it like as like a kundalini energy that rises up through your chakras. And it's using all of this language that, I listen to that and I start shutting down too, because I'm like, oh, that's woo-woo stuff. I don't want any part of that. But if I'm really being honest with myself, I do feel that. And I feel it more now than I did in more recent years. But as a kid, growing up in the church, when I would do things that, were good, and I would get that kind of attaboy, Scooby snack reward of feeling the Holy Ghost, I had those spirit experiences a lot of feeling the Spirit. And it was something that, when I started my faith crisis and started rejecting all of that stuff, it went away in some ways. I found it in other places. So I think it's there. I think everybody has access to it. I think everybody feels it at different times, whether you're recognizing it or not, because you're worrying about this or that. And, that those physical feelings and emotions can be really strong and overpowering and cover it up.
You could almost call it bathing with God, right?
Good.
A bubble bath.
A bubble bath.
Yeah. Well, cool. I relate to all this. So I'm appreciative that, you saw me as somebody that you could introduce this 8-part series to and have a conversation with and around this stuff. And it certainly has been beneficial to me. This is the stuff I want to swim in on a regular basis. So
yeah. So I was happy to stumble across and go, I wonder what Bill Reel's up to. Oh yeah, he's doing this Almost Awakened podcast, and thought that you'd be interested in the bathing with God stuff. And then your response to that and talking, I'm like, okay, well, let's see if you want to talk about this. So I was really happy when you said, yeah, let's talk about it.
I love it.
And last time when you said, let's do more, I'm like, all right, be careful what you ask for, because I've got a lot in here.
Well, good. I am excited. Like, let's see where the next one goes. And then maybe after that, if maybe I can point us to a couple of things. Oh yeah. And we could talk about a few things too.
Sure.
Cause there's a few things, there's a little tiny clip. It's about a 3-minute clip from Jordan Peterson.
Okay.
And I know there's it's a very partisan person, right? You either hate him or like him. But there's a few things that he says in this 3-minute clip that I could literally talk for an hour on that have to do with this bathing with God, Michael Singer type space, and what God is, and how we treat the knowing and unknowing of what that unknown thing is, and how close we can get to it before we start to express certainty. And then the moment we express certainty, we show our cards that we really are nowhere near it, right? We're nowhere next to it. And the people who seem to be the wisest voices seem to tiptoe around it. What is that thing that's beyond our knowing? And religion comes in and goes, oh, we know exactly what it looks like. It's got a 6-inch beard. It's got long hair. It lives in this place. It died on one day and rose 3 days later. And I think the moment you name it, I think you show your cards that you really don't know what it is. I think it's more mysterious than that. And so your bathing with God was touching to me because it played in the space of, I can't really define it, but I'm also going to try and tiptoe around the edges of it. And I think that's as close as the experts can get.
Yeah. Well, that sounds good. Yeah. Send me that Jordan Peterson clip. And if there's other books or 8-course series that you want me to go through that you've got the advantage on and I'm going through for the first time, let me know.
Cool. And in the meantime, I'll start the next one.
Sounds good.
Anything else you want to cover in this conversation?
I think maybe what I'll do is I'll send you a clip that we could tack onto the end of this one to kind of tease what that letting go stuff is, because I recorded something for my Patreon supporters. I think I just published it there. I don't think I published it to the general audience, but I may have. And it's something that I took out of the book Letting Go, that is just saying anytime anything happens to you in your life, you could respond in a variety of ways. And so David Hawkins gives the example of getting into a minor fender bender. And then he says, here's what it's like when you respond from a place of grief. Here's what it's like when you respond from a place of fear. Here's what it's like when you spend, and so he gives these examples of it. And that put it into a really nice framework for me to be able to go, oh yeah, I get this. I understand that there are different, like, legitimate ways that somebody could respond to the same thing. And that's kind of an indication of where they are. And so I'll send you that clip. And then you can insert it right here. Here.
Let's say, for example, that we've parked our car, and just as we get out, the car parked in front of us backs up into our car with a thud. Our bumper and the front fender are dented. Desire. I can make a bundle on this one. I think I'll hold my neck and fake a whiplash. My brother-in-law's a lawyer. We'll sue the pants off this idiot. I'll get a settlement on the highest estimate and get it fixed at a cheaper place. Anger. The damned idiot. I think I'll teach this guy a lesson. He deserves a good punch in the nose. I'll sue his pants off and make him suffer. My blood is boiling. I feel shaky with rage. I could kill the bastard. Pride. Look where you're going, you fool. Oh, God. The world is full of such bumbling idiots. How dare he damage my new car? Who the hell does he think he is? He's probably got cheap insurance. Thank God mine is the best. Courage. His activities. What's the most efficient way to resolve our problem? Incident already forgotten. Okay, so that last one's a little over the top with Pete's, but you get the idea. Were you able to locate yourself in there? Like, how do you think your response would be? And do you have a choice? Do you have a choice on how to respond?
All right, love it. Love it. Let's re-engage again next time.
Okay.
Okay, have a great day, Glenn.
I will.